Alrighty. Everything's on? Think so. Yep. Alrighty, I haven't done a video in forever, but I have done a book. So I'm going to introduce this book and then maybe with the next video or two, show you how it goes together. Basically what I put together was a World War II, as it says, Wargaming Solitaire Toolkit. So for those of us that do are hermits and end up playing a game on our own more often than not, I had a bunch of tables that I put together, and it just grew and grew and grew. So, and this is the end result so far. It can be used for two players for setting up scenarios. What it really is meant to do is add a narrative to the battles that you fight. So, why you're fighting, when you're fighting, who's fighting who. And then on top of that, it sprinkles in a bunch of narrative twists and turns. So there'll be twists when you set up the scenario. There are some fog of war rolls where there's some things that will change the scenario slightly, give you a few surprises along the way. The other thing it has is it has an AI general orders. So what the opposing commander is trying to do, which doesn't always fit the scenario, but to be truthful in history, that happened too. And then also, if you're not quite sure how a platoon is going to react to those general orders, subtables for that too. So that's the overview. A bunch of tables and a bunch of narrative flair. So let's dig into it a little. So it starts, the introduction, what the book does, about flexibility, customization. So I use it for Advanced Squad Leader. I've reworded it and done some stuff where you can also use it for bold action, Flames of War, that kind of thing. So it doesn't have to be a board game, it can be a miniatures game. So if you're playing bold action, you can deploy, instead of, if you don't have a full company's worth of stuff, just pick and choose from, what the force descriptor is. You're playing, the whole idea is you're playing on the fringes of whatever the main campaign is. So, flowchart for usage and such. Then, as far as the setup goes, I have a number here, a number of theaters. So the first one is the random theater. This picks from North Africa, Europe, and the Russian front. So these are just totally random. So, for example, not here, if you roll a 20, Germany 1945, the Oder line. Soviet armies force the river barrier towards Berlin, while German defenders cling to villages and bridgeheads along the Oder. And then usually I put in not just the theater, but also I picked out, this encounter occurs near Kustrin. So, it's a little place, because we're on the edges usually. And it'll give you, so the attackers are Soviets, defender are Germans. So there's 100 of those. And then the next one, so the European theater and such, those usually go in, although they've got the random number you can roll, these will run in historical order. So, for example, the first one is France, 1940 at Sedan. German panzer divisions storm across the Meuse, while French infantry artillery defend hastily prepared positions near Sedan. So attacker Germans, defender French. We can go on a little further. France 44, Operation Bluecoat, British forces push south of Coulmont, while German defenders resist on high ground in Bocage, attacker British, defender Germans, etc., etc. So lots of those. We've got the European theater, the Russian theater, and we've got the North African theater in this book. It also has a lot of Eastern Front what ifs. So, for example, here, Soviet Union 41, Moscow falls. German forces capture Moscow in December, facing desperate Soviet counterattacks in the suburbs. So, attacker Germans, defender Soviets. So that's actually happening in Moscow, which didn't happen, but it's a what if. Again, North Africa, and so on and so on. So that's the when, where, who, part of the book. And there's a good 300 plus scenarios basically right there. The next one I did is terrain layout, that's kind of tough because I don't know what game you're playing, the host game. If you're playing on a board, if you're playing on a tabletop miniatures. So I broke it down. There's a random ASL board layout. Again, I don't know what board you have, if you do have Advanced Squad Leader. But then there's a terrain descriptor for games like Bold Action, Flames of War. And then also on here is the attacker's board edge, just to random that up a little. So, and this kind of looks, so you'll see, so here boards 5, 10, 11, and 4. So, and then otherwise river crossing, attacker enters from the east edge. So that'll give you, now, this is just a system to start you. I use it just to start. You know, if I have no idea what I want to do, I'll use this as a beginning point. The other thing, because these have a good idea of where you are, so Allied forces stall at Enfieldville, giving access time to evacuate more troops. The other thing you can do is just go onto Google Earth and look up where that is and approximate the terrain, which is what I do a lot of times. So, you know, but this is here just for, you know, if you want to throw something together quick, at least a starting idea. So you've got your where you were, who's doing it. Now you've got your terrain. The next one is force generation in the book. I've reformatted this. This is just a pre-proof copy. But usually what this does is it generates two sides of the battle. And what it does, it describes them as mostly infantry companies. Then there's with support weapons and any attachments. So, and I've left it very basic for company description. Then there's a table for overstrength, understrength, which, you know, very very seldomly did a company show up with what they're supposed to have on paper. So there were either reinforced companies, there were understrength companies, etc., etc. But the main force generator, which is D100, both sides attacker versus defender. And again, you know, you can either pick or you can roll. But for example, here, rifle company plus AT guns versus rifle company plus medium tank platoon, which will give you an infantry anti-tank versus armor power. Or here, rifle company versus rifle company plus cavalry troop. So it's infantry versus horse-mounted troops. So, and there are 100 different combinations. Rifle company plus heavy weapons platoon versus rifle company plus assault gun platoon. You know, mix and match. And you can, again, there's another table saved there, understrength, overstrength. If you want larger games, you can roll twice. If you're playing like a tabletop version, you only want platoon strength, you can roll this and just pick a couple of platoons from each side. You know, and then whatever you've got models for, really, a lot of times. If you want to play, you know, an extremely balanced scenario, if your system has points, you can figure it out. You know, this will just give you a basic structure of what shows up. And then, you know, have fun playing them out. And I've done this, I mean, I've got lots of scenarios where normally I wouldn't have put these units together, but that's what showed up. So it makes it kind of interesting, I think. The next table in this book is the victory conditions. So that's a D20. So, and again, you can pick them if it fits to your map and you want to, you know, that looks more like the story you want to tell, then just pick it. Otherwise, if you haven't got an idea, you can roll. For example, let's see, strong point assault, number 13, control 2 fortified buildings in enemy setup area. That lasts 8 to 10 turns. Again, that's roughly ASL. Change it as you want. If there's no fortifications, defenders gain 2 fortified locations. So defender puts 2 fortified pieces on the map or on the table, and there you go. That's what you need to do, is assault that strong point. That's what you're doing at that time, at that place, on that terrain. Woods and fields, whole majority of woods, orchards, 6 to 8 turns. You know, so it gives you lots of different wrinkles of what you actually need to do in detail tactically on the tabletop. There's a nice mix of those. Here, seize the guns, control all hexes with heavy support weapons, 8 to 10 turns. Now, if on the roll-up you don't get any support weapons, you can place one captured gun in the central building somewhere, and that's what you're going to get. So, again, table system agnostic. So here's a note: ASL players can use hex counters and CVPs as written. Bolt action players can translate hexes into terrain features. So, So now we've got our terrain. We know what our forces are. We're pretty much good to go. And then you can add here the scenario tweaks. So there's 20 of those. And you do these scenario setup events, and I'll pick one at random. So, for example, I don't know, bombed area. 1d3 buildings are rubble at the start of play, representing shelling or abandonment. Or hidden approach. The attacker may set aside one small unit per company, a squad or a team, and enter them closer to the defender's side as infiltrators. So things like that, just to add a wrinkle. Again, you can pick 1, 2, you can roll once, roll 3 times, all kinds of things. And then again, there's the Fog of War. What I've done on the Fog of War roll as well, again, use or don't use, it just gives you things like enemy reserves at a set point midway through a scenario. Defender unexpectedly gains reinforcements of average strength. Again, it's pretty generic, so you can fit to your host game whatever you think is going to work. The other thing I do use Fog of War for is how many hidden setups the defender will get. So basically, the higher the roll, the less I know about the defender. In Advanced Squad Leader, they're the hidden counters, and that explains that down here. So after the Fog of War has been done, everything. So now you're actually playing the game. The other thing I like to do. So the opponent AI oracle. Some people like oracles. I like them to help, but not to rule everything. The one thing I do, though, is use an overall stance D10. You can either pick from this, if you think he's a decent commander you'll be running into, pick the best one that fits, or you can roll. I mean, an enemy might show up and he's got total Fog of War too. He doesn't know how much of the force is coming at him. He might decide to defend, or he might think, come on, let's just go at him. So you can roll and get what the general orders are. Everything from, let's see, static defense, stay in place, dig in, fire at range is the general orders, or you might get a delay, harass, avoid decisive battle, focus on slowing the enemy, inflicting attrition. So, and then after this there's a bunch of platoon level random orders, so whichever his general orders are, you've got a 10 for, and I usually use this for squads that are not with a leader. Instead of just picking the best thing that they do, your enemy, when you're playing them, is going to make mistakes. So use this to kind of simulate bad decisions, instead of, when you're playing against yourself, that's hard to do. So I use this every now and then just to, stir it up a little. There's also an AI target priority matrix. So, and that you can use that to roll or as a step down list. So, so the infantry firer, will first target enemy squad with support weapon, enemy leader, stacks, enemy closest to an objective hex, stuff like that. If you want to random that up, the table's there. If you like, you can also have an ongoing random events every turn. Just roll for something. There's a good, just little wrinkles and weird stuff out of left field. Usually you can't change the battle, but you get the right thing happen at the right time can change the battle. So they're here to make it interesting. These are also here more for a narrative flavor. If you're your battle actually tells a story. This kind of thing can make that a little more interesting. But that's basically it. There's a scenario sheet for you to fill in. There's also a table for ongoing campaigns. So if you want to roll one battle into the next, so let's say, we've done the attack, and then depending on whether you win or lose, depends on, you get squad experience, leader development, equipment recovery, vehicle repairs, reinforcements, you know, to replace what you've lost. If you get any special equipment, things like that. And then that way you can fight your next battle. You are going to get less if you lose than you do if you win, because it's a matter of trust. They're not going to give somebody a bunch of stuff if they keep losing. And then, then at the end, there's a bunch of unit compositions historically. You know, how accurate are they? Because nothing was ever what it was written on paper, but it gives you a rough idea of how they like to put their forces together. I've got in this book German, Russian, British, and the US. So basically the Western Theatre of War. If this book is popular, I am working on a Pacific version, and which would also probably add some of the minor armies in, like the French and the Italians. Not that the French and Italians were minor armies, but I don't know. I was just working on what I had in front of me for Advanced Squad Leader and decided to branch out. So there it is, the World War II Wargaming Solitaire Toolkit. It's available on Amazon. I will put a link in. So, you know, if it's something you think would help you, you know, play a game, especially if it's solitaire. I mean, you can use it to set up two-player games too. I mean, you can use all of this and then just use a point system to make it equal, if you want to. But you know, not many. I'm not a big fan of like tournament play battles, just because most of the time it wasn't equal, and it always made a better story when it wasn't. So that's my offering to the community. It is $14.99 because Amazon takes their cut plus printing costs. So do me a favor, buy one or not, you know. But you know, give it a good look. And my next video will be running one of these for Advanced Squad Leader. So stay tuned.